It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome back for his 6th appearance on the Douglas Coleman Show, Peter Abrams. Hello, Peter. Welcome back.
Hello, Douglas. I love doing your show. Can I tell you that?
Well, thank you.
It's the 6th time.
Well, you are the most frequent guest on the show. I don't think anybody has been on 6 times.
That is one of my life's greatest honours, and I will be maintaining that title.
Well, it's always an honor to have you here. Just to do a bit of catch-up, the last time you were here was April of 2022, so it was over a year ago.
Really?
And it was just before your USA tour. I do want to hear all about that. But what I thought was interesting, just as a little bit of history here, from your first appearance on the show to now, you have gone through 4 prime ministers, a new monarch, and a new Archbishop of Canterbury. And I'll tell you, I was very happy that when I watched the coronation of King Charles, I was very happy that you had a new Archbishop, because the previous one, I don't know, he looked like a complete scuzzbucket to me. He looked like you would need to check him for lice before you allowed him into the Abbey.
Yep, we've had a total rejig. The coronation was absolutely massive here. It wasn't underplayed at all. It was everywhere for quite a while. But you know what? I quite enjoy the ceremony. Whether you like the royal family, whether you don't, and all the politics aside, ceremony and seeing lots of people get together, I think, is a powerful thing. And I thought that was a positive thing that came out of it.
Well, see, this is one thing
that's really interesting.
Yeah, that we don't have here that I think is good for the UK is he's sort of a unifying figure, because he's not conservative, he's not Labour, he's the king. And you can put that all aside for the few hours. You know, it's like when the Queen died and everybody went to the funeral and watched the funeral. And there was this moment where people put their sort of bats and guns down and just said, okay, let's respect this great woman who has been our sovereign for the last 70 years. And nobody, unless you're 90 years old now, remembers any coronation in the UK.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And it was wonderful. I loved watching it. I thought, oh, God, this is better than Disney. You know, because it sort of looks like that sort of Cinderella fairy tale kind of thing, but it's real and it's happening. And I just thought that was the best TV on for a long time.
It's just so fascinating, isn't it, that in our world of iPhones and artificial intelligence, when it comes to it, we have tradition and we have ceremony and we have people dressed up in silly little outfits doing silly little marches because it's what we've always done. And I think there's a real combustion in the world of the old traditions mixed with this new technological world that we exist in, and how they both interact with one another. It's fascinating.
It's true, because if you think about this, we've only had electricity for about 130 years. But those silly little costumes and the tradition has been going on for over 1,000 years in the UK.
Yeah, and I love when they get out, they get out the old dusty books and they have to wipe away all the cobwebs on them as they read aloud the same words that have been read for thousands of years. It's just interesting, isn't it, how regardless of where we're at politically and everything else going on, but there are these unifying things that bring us all back together. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, especially in times when it feels very disconnected.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all. And I think that people in America are struggling to find something. And we haven't found it yet because we're so divided here. And we don't have that sort of unifying figure. It used to be the president. because if you go back far enough, maybe not all that far, I'd say JFK was probably the last one.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And, whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, there were always people that didn't like him, but his approval ratings were tremendous. So I think most people sort of said, okay, this guy is a good guy. After him and after the Vietnam War, and especially after Nixon, it just all went right in the toilet, and it hasn't come back. And then Trump was another, he pushed it deeper down into the sewer, and now we are where we are.
I think we have to learn as a society how to exist alongside people we don't agree with again. I think we live in such a connected world where whether you're on social media or you're watching the news or you're in busy cities surrounded by thousands of people, understanding that we can coexist with people that we don't fully align with, because we're all so different in so many ways. And I think the attitude has to be to find the commonality between people as a starting point, instead of hold everybody by gunpoint and say, if you do anything or say anything wrong, you're the enemy. Especially with my generation, I found with social media in particular, everybody's performing as almost like the protagonist of their life. They like to be the main character. The problem with that is, in Western culture, how we tell stories is, for a protagonist to exist, there has to be an antagonist for them to stand in opposition of. So a lot of people are on social media playing, I'm the good guy, I'm the hero here, and we pick and choose people who, if we were in a room with face to face, we'd probably get along with just fine, and sort of demonize them, turn them into sort of antagonists for which we can stand in opposition to. And I don't think that's a healthy way to interact.
No, and plus the social medias and the chats and the boards and the postings and tweets and all that, you have this certain anonymity. You have this wall. And you said that they probably get along just fine in person. They probably wouldn't say most of what they say on Twitter to somebody's face.
Yeah, because the interaction is different, isn't it? A living, breathing human is different to words on a screen that you're holding.
Exactly. And you know what the irony is that when the internet first started, I thought that this was going to be the great unifier. And it's had just the opposite effect.
Well, the problem is how the interface is. You can't debate with anybody when you've only got 150 characters to communicate through.
Yes,
it's not enough.
That's true.
The point of it is not to. There's a great say. If you were trying to design a system to separate people, you couldn't do a much better job than the current social media platforms, because the way they operate it's not real. It's not how we communicate in real life. And it's exactly what you said. It creates for hostility because you're not dealing with people in an authentic way.
You have to wonder if people like Zuckerberg and, what was his name? The founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, if they could have even imagined the sort of genie that they let out of the bottle when they came up with these platforms. I think not. Yeah, I think not.
I don't think so. I think they've all started from I do believe they all started from an honest position of, if you actually learn the history of like how Facebook started and whatnot, I think it started through honest means. And then I think, like everything in our culture, the profit that drives it, and the interaction and the huge tidal wave of attention and the way it's held our attention has meant that it's turned into what it is now. And I don't think we can exist like this healthily. I'm rarely on social media as a user. I will go on to post or promote or do any of those things, but I'm no longer sitting there looking at other people's lives. I try and limit who I interact with to people I speak to. We can catch up when we do these. Everyone else in my sort of circle of my life, I speak to in person, and everybody else, I just don't. I don't think it's. I think people say, "Oh, you can connect with lost friends," and nobody does that. Nobody uses social media to do that. Everybody uses social media to observe the drama and the gossip of what's going on. And I'm over it, man. I'm stepping out. I'm doing a Jim Carrey.
Well, it's the same with me. Social media is a one-way system for me. I post about the shows that are coming or that are up, and throw an odd picture up once in a while of some rock star or movie star that I like, or some sort of candid photo.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't, and I'll talk to maybe a couple of people, John, my producer, we chat.
Yeah.
And that's really about it. I don't have big, in-depth conversations with people on social media. If I want a conversation with them, they'll come on the show, and we can have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of.
But you're fortunate that you're lucky that you've got a great platform to do that. I think a lot of people who are on social media are there because they're basically lonely. I think they don't have connection, so they're seeking it online.
Oh, that's possible. There was a thing on, speaking of social media, there was one of those, are you old enough to remember? And it was going on a date without using an app first. And I had to laugh at that one because, yes, I'm old enough. But for someone in your age group, it might not be. They may have never gone on a date without using an app first.
No, I'd say 9 out of 10 people are meeting and going on dates through people they've met on an app. God, we could go on a whole tangent of how I think men in society have lost the ability to kind of almost interact with women. You don't see people meeting in person and connecting that way. It's always vetted through an app first, and I suppose that does offer a layer of security, and you can check somebody's profile out and see who they are and what they do, but it just takes the beauty out of it, doesn't it? The fact that these dating apps tell you who you should match with based on what kind of person you like, and it's like, well, of course you're not meeting anybody you're really connecting with when the people you're matching are being funneled through some algorithmic weird Cupid AI that's telling you, oh, because you liked 3 people with brown hair, we're only going to show you girls with brown hair. And it's like, well, what if the most wonderful person in the world that you would spend the rest of your life with is just dyed her hair blonde? Sorry, algorithm says no, you're not allowed. It's just crazy.
Well, I know this might sound a bit primitive, but you give up certain things when you pick someone on an app. Namely, your sense of smell. And now I'm not referring to BO necessarily, but there is a smell factor in sex. Ask the dogs.
Yeah.
They're the first ones to admit it. And you don't have that with an app. You also don't have the sound. If you don't do a voice thing, she could look wonderful and have a voice like Fran Drescher. And you just... you miss that, where if you meet somebody in person at a bar or a club or at the supermarket, you get the whole thing right there instantly. And, you give them the once over and you maybe chat, and if they're not giving off a bad odor, then, you move on to step 2. But you've sort of eliminated those 2 parts, which I think are an essential part of the dating equation.
Well, and of course, we've also skipped over the fact that it's very easy to appear on these apps different to how you really are in real life.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So the people you're actually meeting on these apps could very well be very different from the persona that they're portraying there, which goes back to your point of in person, you can't kid, it's more authentic. And I also think it works the other way of we're so judgmental. We look at 5 or 6 photos of somebody and read a couple of words, and we create a whole idea in our mind of whether they'd be compatible or not for us. That's not how compatibility works. That's not how connecting with people works. And I think by reducing it to data and algorithms, it takes away everything human and is exactly the explanation for why these things tend to not work. There's a really interesting guy called David Buss, he's a biologist who studies like human mating behavior, and his work's really fascinating because in our modern world of woke culture where we're changing dynamics and we're breaking traditional boundaries down, there is an underlying current of science that says, but we do interact and engage with each other in certain ways because underneath the societal labels we've attached to each other, there is a primal monkey doing what monkey does, basically,
Yes, yeah. We're not that grand just because we have a smartphone.
That's it, isn't it? A smartphone. On that phone is pretty much all of recorded human history, and people are using it to download dating apps that don't work for them. So maybe we're not that smart.
Speaking of not that smart, let's touch on this one and then we'll move on to your USA tour because I do want to hear about it.
Sure.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Now, they seem to just be stepping in it deeper and deeper every time. Did you see the latest one where they alleged that they had some car chase through New York City when, in fact, the police denied it and the mayor of New York City denied it? And maybe somebody on a bicycle was sort of casually following them. And I don't know what it was. But you know what I thought of? And it's kind of relevant to what we were just talking about. There's a difference between Hollywood celebrities and royals. And I don't think she understands that. She might now, but I don't think she did. Because Hollywood celebrities give up their private lives. Royals give up their private lives and their personal lives. And there's a difference. Hollywood, let's take Tom Cruise, for an example, as a Hollywood celebrity. He can do whatever the fuck he wants to do. He can decide he's going to go sit on a mountain in Tibet and meditate for 2 years. And great, go, Tom. The press is going to, and the paparazzi are going to follow him. He'll struggle for privacy. But he can do whatever he wants. Royals, I don't think Charles would be too keen on William deciding to go sit on a mountain for 2 years and meditate and give up all of his royal duties that he's expected to do, and he was expected to do from the day he was born, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't think she got that. I think she thought, oh, I'm marrying a prince, and this is where the social media and all of this comes back in, is that the royals have become like Hollywood celebrities, at least the kids. I think Charles is old enough that he's sort of away from that. But William, and especially Harry, they're more like Hollywood celebrities. William made the break. He understands his duties come first, right? But I think Harry struggled with it, and I think Meghan just sort of pulled him right into the Twitter vortex.
Yeah, it's a golden cage, isn't it? Being born into that life. It's luxury to do what you're expected to. I think the reason why the royals have become celebrified, a word we can claim that we've just made up, is because we have very little to believe in as people. Religion is not of course, globally it is, but I'm talking about in Western culture, especially people who are interested in celebrity. It fills the void, doesn't it, of that need for faith, that need to believe in something.
Yeah.
Myself, I don't sit here and say I'm a believer in a traditional God per se. However, I recognize in the human experience the need to believe in something bigger than ourselves is clearly something that it remains in everybody's lives. And the problem with placing a human or a celebrity in that role is that humans are flawed and will at some point let you down in some way, to which then where do you turn? Which is why I do believe finding something bigger than yourself to believe in and align with is a very healthy way to move through life. And I don't think that has to be an evil, all-encompassing, powerful God. I think that could be music or nature or something that makes you realize you're not the center of the world, and that actually we need to be part of a community to function, because that's how we've always lived. And again, despite the social media and those ancient primitive needs still very much exist in our modern brains. You know, the brain that we have in our skulls, me and you and everybody listening, is anatomically the same, more or less, than the ones our caveman ancestors had. In fact, it shrunk a little bit because we don't have to use it that much to think about stuff.
That's true.
And because of that, we realize that, of course, we're bestowed with amazing intelligence and knowledge because we've been able to record data through the technology that's developed. But there's still that primal side of us that needs to be fed. And I think the reason, taking it back to the point, why people like Meghan, who was a celebrity before all this anyway, and now the royal family have become celebrities, is it's somewhere in that space, because they're not normal people and they're not superhuman. They exist in a weird golden cage, and I think people love it. I think, you know, you watched the coronation. People were standing out there for days at a time. They went and queued for hours and slept on the floor just to be close to it. That's a powerful thing that will make somebody compelled to do that.
Yeah, they're not doing that for Biden.
No. He'd probably fall asleep by the time
there's nobody camping out on the White House lawn, that's for sure.
I cannot believe every time I get up to date with the news in America that pretty much every single time I check, there's a new video of him doing something ridiculous. And I think, oh my God, you sweet, ridiculous old man, you clearly can't function and you're in charge of a bloody country. That can't be right, can it? Surely there's got to be a different way we can operate on a political level that doesn't result in basically Trump and then Biden. Like, this is a facade. It's got to be. This cannot be power. Look at the power. He's falling asleep and falling down the stairs.
The clock is ticking towards 2024 very quickly. And I think, and this is just my opinion, but I believe that the majority of Americans would prefer to see neither of them as the next president. Now, Trump is definitely running. Biden, I don't know. But
what about Kennedy, Robert Kennedy?
Well, he threw his hat in, but it's difficult to go up against the incumbent president. That hasn't happened too often, where the party rejects the incumbent for someone else.
Right.
So it's not entirely up to them. It's sort of up to the party to nominate who they're going to pick. But the pickings are really slim on the Democratic side. You've got Robert Kennedy Jr. and you've got Marianne Williamson, who, I don't know if you've even seen her, but she's sort of one of these new age guru, crystal ball, sort of too much marijuana and acid in the 60s type.
Well, I've not seen her in particular, but I've been around people like that for the last 5 years. And as much as I love a lot of them, I wouldn't put them in charge of the most powerful nation on earth.
I don't want her having the nuclear football. I really don't.
Well, nuclear power doesn't exist, Douglas. It's just peace and love and vibration, so we'll be fine.
Maybe you don't know what that is. Do you know what the nuclear football is? That's an American term. It's the briefcase that has the launch codes for all of our missiles.
Oh, my God.
And they call it a football because it gets passed from one to the next to the, you know.
More people watch your Super Bowl than vote in your election. So,
it's true. It's true.
Maybe that'll get them more involved.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's shift to your U.S. tour. So you were here last year in the middle of the summer.
Yes.
And did you run into any problems with COVID, or had it pretty much wind down by then?
Yeah. After just talking smack about your political system for 10 minutes, I'm now going to tell you how much I love your country and I want to live there. We were fine. The COVID had died by that point. You know, that thing that made us lose 2 years of our lives locked in our homes had totally gone away. And so we were able to move freely through the land of the free. And honestly, it was just it was just the best time of my life. It's the best thing I've experienced, because in an age of sat navs and pre-booked hotels, we actually just took the spirit of adventure. And apart from the shows that we had, which meant we knew we had to be in those places at certain times, everything else we improvised, and we just found hotels and we went off the beaten track and went to cool places. And the amount of crazy stories that truly happened was so much that I've actually decided I'm going to write a short storybook, basically, in the style of some of my favorite authors like Hunter S. Thompson, who I've fallen in love with. Despite his absolute bizarreness, I love the rebel outsider gonzo style of writing. So I'm going to capture the whole story of that tour in a short book called New York Friends, which will come out either the end of this year or the start of next. And it was just amazing. So, I mean, we got to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful of America. And I'd been numerous times, but I encountered so many things that I never even knew existed. You know, being in London and seeing the adverts for America of the Golden Gate Bridge and Disneyland doesn't do it justice when you're driving down the PCH or you're in a national park, and you just think, we went through every terrain imaginable minus a volcano. You know, we saw everything else, and it was like, this country is just amazing. And the amount of brilliant people that we met, it just really, it really was just the best time. And I could go on about it forever.
Well, I'm happy to hear some positive PR about America, because we tend to hear all the negative things on the news, and people getting beat up in the subways, and crime is at an all-time high, and blah, blah, blah. So when you hear it from a tourist perspective that they had a wonderful time, I think it's great. I did see your Facebook pictures of, I think you were throwing your brother into the Grand Canyon or something. There were a couple of pictures of that, you know?
He wound me up. I had enough, and I thought, no, you're going over the edge.
So I did see that. I saw your pictures. The Grand
Canyon's cool.
Yeah, I saw your pictures of Las Vegas. I got to tell you about that, because I am sorry we didn't get to meet up. But 2 days before you messaged me on Facebook, my father-in-law died, and he died rather suddenly. And then, so there was this whole sort of people in the house coming and going. My wife was hysterical, and because of her father. And so the idea of, hey, honey, want to go see a rock band at a club? It just it couldn't have been the worst timing. Do you know what I mean? So
there will always be the next time. The plan is to come back, if not yearly, then every other year, and do a similar thing, hopefully scaling up in size. So the next time that we're there, you'll come down, and hopefully by that point we'll be so popular you'll be getting a VIP pass and being one of the cool guys.
Or maybe you can come see me in the Inner Hebrides at my fix-up cottage.
Hey.
You never know.
We're going to switch, aren't we? I'm going to live in your place, and you're going to come and live up here in Scotland.
Yeah.
Because I'm in Scotland at the minute, and it's not raining, and it's sunny. And when Scotland is not rainy, which is a rare occasion, it is probably the most beautiful place in the UK.
Well, it looked good to me. I watched a couple of videos of just, people had made of going around in the different places. And you really need a boat, because there's so many little islands, to go to. Anyways, we're a few years off yet. And we're talking about there. She's talking about Thailand, too. Talk about opposites. Well, we're either going to go to Scotland or Thailand. I mean, come on.
Flip a coin.
Yeah. Talk about extremes of weather. And I said, well, where else, the tip of Norway? You want to go up there where, there's no sun for 4 months? So I don't know. We'll work that out. But tell me about the Viper Room. Now, how many people were there?
Whatever the capacity was, which I think's 250.
Oh, it was full. Good. You sold it out?
Yeah. I mean, so we were meant to play one show there, which was great in itself. And then at the Viper Room, they actually have an acoustic lounge as well, which I didn't even know. So the booking agent said we just travelled back from Palm Springs. I'd rushed into a rehearsal room. I was so jet lagged and tired and hungover, if I'm being honest, that I got through the rehearsal. And then she messaged me and said, do you want to do an acoustic set tomorrow to like sort of, since you've come all the way and you're here, there's a spare slot that's opened up. How would you feel about that? And we said, of course, if playing the Viper Room once is cool, playing it twice is great. And then we went and did like an unannounced, just impromptu acoustic little number, and it was brilliant. And the room was kind of semi-full, and we said, we're coming back tomorrow. And then basically we ended up having like a weekend residency there, because then we played 3 more times, just night after night. And on the last night, I had what is still the greatest performative moment of my life in any sort of whether it be music or speaking or anything, where I don't know, I mean you will know, because I know you've done music yourself, but everything went well, nothing went wrong, which is always amazing. And it wasn't because it was packed out, it was because before we'd even started the band, we went to New York and we got to go on stage with a band called 30 Seconds to Mars, who are actually playing at the festival tomorrow in Scotland that I'm at. And they've got a song called City of Angels, which is all about how he found a home in Los Angeles and the dreams did come true. But it's very self-aware. It takes into account how many people don't get that fortunate break. And we got to see that on stage at Madison Square Garden in New York about a year before the band became a proper thing. Mm-hmm. So then fast forward all the years later, we did a cover of City of Angels at the Viper Room on the Sunset Strip, and the whole room was silent. And it was just the most beautiful moment of music that I've experienced from a performer's point of view. And the show just couldn't have gone better. So, I'm very thankful that nothing went wrong. And it is going to be a lifelong memory, right up there with the very best. So, yeah, amazing.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that. I did see your sort of short video clip on YouTube. Did you get any? Yeah. Did you do like a proper video of the whole show?
Yeah, so we've got a full thing, which we're actually going to release as like a live album on Spotify and everything, so everyone can hear the live set in full. But we haven't got around to editing that yet because we're recording our debut album, so that will come out at some point. But yeah, we filmed the whole thing. The music video we put out for New York Friends is out now, and that has clips of it in there, which is I love that video. We made it ourselves, and I just think it captures the energy, the chaos, and the sort of wonderment that we experienced on that trip.
Well, it is a good video, but I was itching for more. I wanted to see the whole show because I missed it. So, I wanted about an hour and a half or whatever it was, however long you played, to watch the whole thing of you guys on stage, And
well, I'll send you the raw footage after this. I'll send it across as just like a video file so you can see that. But
I'd love to
release as a proper thing for everybody to see as well at some point in the near future.
And I promise I won't share it on any of those porn sites or anything.
I know you.
Okay, so how long were you here?
It was nearly 2 months.
Oh, was that long?
It was just yeah, it was quite a while. We were definitely jaded by the end of it. We ended up in San Francisco, which had definitely taken a beating during COVID and was the most expensive city in the world at the time that we were there. And in a way, it was kind of poetic that we ended in San Francisco, because I think if we hadn't ended there, I would never have wanted to leave. But the state of San Francisco when we were there was so bad that I was kind of, along with the tiredness of the tour, ready to head home.
I haven't been to San Francisco in many, many years, and I've heard it's just turned into one giant drug den, and people sleeping on the streets, and watch where you step. It's not from a dog.
Mate, the first thing that we got told when we checked, there were 2 really funny things that happened when we were checking into hotels. And the first one was when we went to Palm Springs. And I didn't realise there's a massive gay community in Palm Springs. So me and my brother have checked into this hotel, and obviously we're two like young dudes, and the guy obviously didn't think we looked similar because he literally said, "Oh, hi, welcome. Are you guys gay?" And we were like,
Oh,
"Sorry."
he thought you were a couple.
We were a couple, which was hilarious. And also, like, the first sentence to ask somebody, it's just like, it's so random. And the second one was in San Francisco. Literally, they welcomed us and then said, "Listen, we're just going to tell you off the bat, steer clear of tenderloin because it's not very nice anymore." And we were literally just like a block over from it. And we sort of walked on the edge of it to get to this place we were going. And honestly, like, I've been to Thailand. I've been to places in the world where there's a certain level of poverty.
Oh, it's not
but
the
I've
same.
I've never seen something so heartbreaking as what I saw in San Francisco. Just people who had become like zombified through abuse and substance abuse. And the amount of tents on these, like, we just come from Los Angeles and Las Vegas, where there was that, very evidently, but it was at least twice as bad in San Francisco. Every shop that we saw, from Gucci to Burger King, had security 24/7 because of the situation there. And we just said, I just can't believe, how does someone get so bad? It was like a massive drug den. It was a massive drug den, is how it felt.
It's an entirely different situation. I mean, if you look at India or Thailand, like you mentioned, and you see poverty, it's just an unfortunate way of life for those people. In San Francisco, it's largely due to addiction. Okay, the people in Thailand and in India who are begging on the streets, they're not drug addicts for the most part.
Yeah, you're right.
And they'll happily take food, or they'll take whatever you can offer them. The ones on the streets in San Francisco, generally speaking, if you were to offer them food, they'd probably throw it back in your face and get violent, because all they want is money. They just want cash so they can buy drugs. And
it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah,
we've got to live better than this,
And the government isn't helping. I mean, they're doing a lot of this free needles in exchange and safe houses for people to use, and all they're doing is perpetuating the problem. They need to get these people into treatment.
It's enabling, isn't it?
Yeah. They need to get these people into treatment. Obviously, locking them in prison isn't going to solve the problem, but it does get them off the street. It's kind of a tricky sort of a balance. You don't want to just do like they did in the 90s, the war on drugs, and lock everybody up. But at the same time, you can't just open the doors and start throwing, fentanyl and crack and whatever else out on the street for everybody like a piñata. That won't work either. So they haven't figured it out yet. But let's get off this grim topic. And
cheer it up a little bit.
and fly back across the pond to Scotland. So you're in Scotland now, and you're doing a music festival. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so we're going to a music festival. Radio 1, which is like the biggest radio station in the UK, they're putting on a festival tomorrow. And two of our favourite bands, which is 30 Seconds to Mars and the 1975, they're both playing on the same show. So we're going down. It's just going to be an awesome day celebrating music and fun. And I love being around it. It's also nice to go as a fan again sometimes. You work so hard and do so much from the performer's point of view. It's lovely to just switch off and just be a fan as well sometimes.
Oh, yeah. So you're not performing?
Not tomorrow, no. But we're doing loads of shows in England at the minute. We actually were playing shows in London on the weekend of the coronation, which was hilarious because there was so much, it was so much busier with tourism that, half the crowd were people who liked our music and half the crowd were these random people from all over the world who just wanted to see some live music in the rock scene in England. And it's great. We got to make loads of new fans and friends, and that was a really cool weekend. And we're going to Newcastle once we're finished. So we've come up to Scotland to go to this festival, going back to Newcastle, doing a show there. The summer, we're going all over. We're going to Ireland, to Dublin. It's going to be busy, but it's going to be super fun. And I feel like we have to do that because I love America so much that I've ended up doing everything in America first. We went and played shows before we did a tour in England, which is kind of unfair to all the people who wanted to see us here.
Well, that's all right. Now you're back, and it sounds like things are going well, and I'm very happy. You said you're going to put an album out soon?
Yep. So obviously we put the EP out.
The EP is out, right.
A while back now, and basically we've just finished recording a full-length album, and our sound has grown. I would say a lot. We've all become better musicians. We've all become better like producers, and we know what we're doing more with our live setup, and we know what we're doing more with our promotion of the music, and we've been able to meet really cool people in the industry, and it's looking really good. And with everything I do, I like to try and get it to be as successful as possible. But for me, there is the gratitude aspect always of, I just love the fact that I'm in a band. It's a privilege to be in a position where I can make an art project, in this case music. Some people care about it, which is lovely. And we're able to have these amazing memories and experiences from having this band. So it's always from a position of humbleness and gratitude.
Are you still a three-piece?
Yeah. Guitars, drums, sings.
You don't want to find a bass player?
I would like to find a bass player, but I also... We have like session musicians that will come and play live with us. But for me, I like to keep things tight, and I like to have people involved that understand the whole like point of it. So I like our little posse.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very difficult being in a three-piece. Even Eric Clapton said so about Cream. And, if you notice that once Cream broke up and he went on tour as a solo performer, he had about 15 people on stage with him at any given moment, because it's tough being in a three-piece. Everybody's got to be right on. If somebody drops it, you can't cover it. So kudos to you guys for doing it, but it is a lot of work.
I think in the long run, of course, the idea is to keep scaling it up, and with that would be having a bass player alongside more musicians. You see any major band touring, you've got the people on stage that everybody recognises, and you've got at least a couple other people not on the stage doing some sort of live component. So when you're an underground band trying to find a larger audience, you just got to do whatever works. Like, you've just got to go for it. And I think too many people spend too much time worrying that it's not legit or it's not proper, and actually, like, you've just got to make it work and learn as you go. I think having the courage to just say, look, this is what we've got right now, so we're going for it. And at the end of the day, if we're making music that we care about and we're performing that to the best of our ability, I'd never criticize anybody if they have to take a shortcut here or there because they don't have thousands of dollars being funded by a label yet. You just make it work, and it's very DIY, and that's half of the fun most of the time is finding ways to make it work. Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith, the shaker at the start that everybody thinks is like a Macarena is a packet of sugar. Because at the time they couldn't find one. So if anyone listens to Sweet Emotion, the rustling at the start, that's actually a sugar packet that they shook into the microphone.
Oh, that's funny. Well, the beginning of Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones, I think that was a cooking pot.
Yeah.
Or something like that, because it has that sound.
It's amazing. I think in our world of our imperfected products crammed down our throats, again, we lose out on something real and something fun and something unorthodox, finding a way to make it work. And if recording a sugar packet into a microphone makes a great sound that makes a great song, then that's valid, that's fair. I have no pretension when it comes to art or creating art. I think too many people have far too many rules, and that's why Bowie, one of my idols, is that, because there were no rules. It was, how do we break the rules? And then when they found success, it was, right, this worked because we did it like this. let's make sure we don't do that for this album. Let's do something totally different. Him and Brian Eno, obscurity cards, you know, they wrote down all these different words on cards, and every day in the studio would pick out a new card with an instruction on, which would say something along the lines of change instrument roles, try and play 10 notes, not in the same space, in 4 minutes, and all these weird zany ideas. And that was the album that produced songs like Heroes, which have stood the test of time. And there's a really funny story where they both picked out a card, and Bowie's card said, break every pattern. So do every time you record, do something completely different. And Brian Eno's card said, keep everything the same. Stick to your formula today. And they went a whole day recording and couldn't get anything that worked together. And at the end of the day, they said, what did your card say? And they absolutely pissed themselves laughing of no wonder it wasn't working.
They got the yin and yang cards.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I love the creativity. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't want creativity to be sucked out of the process.
You had mentioned record label, and that brings up an interesting topic, because back in my day, I mean, that was what bands all sort of aspired to get signed by a label, because you really couldn't do it any other way. There wasn't the option of the internet and to do it yourself. DIY didn't exist in those days. You couldn't even get a record into a record shop without being represented by a label. There are those funny stories of those guys in New York selling record albums out of the trunk of their car on the street corner, and, you know, that didn't work out too well. But nowadays, it is quite possible to be very successful without a label and without the restrictions of a label and an A&R man telling you what to do and what not to do, and them taking a big chunk of your pie. So is that what you're aspiring towards, or no, or take it as it comes?
Take it as it comes, with the understanding that signing with a label or anything of the sort obviously takes away some creative freedom. But you trade that in, obviously, for the push to a visible platform. The problem with everybody being able to make music now is that everybody makes music now. And so being heard amongst the noise is very difficult. The problem also is everybody making music now says, my music's really great, which means everybody's making music and all of it's great. So it all blurs into one. I still think labels have a place, because I think, again, the industry is driven primarily for profit, and they have the ability to put people on a pedestal where people will notice them. I also think in an age of everybody wanting, like we said earlier, to attach themselves to something valid and legit, being attached to a label gives you that badge of approval and legitimacy that people should take you seriously. So I do think there's a role to play. I think, like with anything, it's very much dependent of where you're at as a band or as an artist. And I think different artists would benefit most from being part of the industry properly at different points. For us, so far, there's been no need. Had we been signed by a label, we wouldn't. Nothing we've done so far would have been better if we were on a label. But I'd also be lying if I said at some point it would be great to be able to have doors open for us that we probably couldn't open on ourselves. But it just depends, you know, like we're looking at things like Patreon, which is these sorts of platforms where you can kind of crowd fund the process yourself, because what is a label apart from like a bank, in a way, a bank and maybe a door here or there opened. So I don't know. I think it's a very complex point, and I'll take it as it comes. However, the point of what Current Affairs was when it started and still is today, is trying to make something authentic that stands for something and allows us as people to be able to play live music and connect with people and created. I'd love that to be as big as possible, but like I said, it all comes from a place of gratitude of like, it's just cool we get to do this, you know?
Speaking of Scotland, what about that other band called Current Affairs? Are they still around?
Nope, I threw him off the Grand Canyon. No, we
good.
don't know, but the real Current Affairs is in Scotland now, so they can they can come and try and dispute the trademark. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of fortunate that Current Affairs was us and one other band calling themselves that. I mean, most bands now, if you type a name in onto Spotify, there's like 50 all with the same name, and God, then that in itself is like, if you can't even stand out with your own name, you're really going to struggle. So, yeah.
Well, I think on that we've done just about an hour. Anything else you want?
Wow.
Anything else you want to bring up before we wind it down?
No, I'm good. I've finished. I had a weird, never experienced it before. I had a weird creative spur about 6 months ago, where I ended up. I basically. There's about 5 books that I've now got in my repertoire. One of them is about to be released. One of them's finished and going to come out after that. And then I've got 3 other books which are pretty much nearly done. So I had this bizarre outload of creativity, and they're all about different things. And we'll have to probably talk about that next time. But the next book I'm going to release is called Our Human Condition. And the tagline of the book, which I think gives it more, it makes it clearer of what it's about, is it's hard to be a human being if you're not sure what being human means. And it kind of looks at basically what we've talked about today, how we're these intelligent, self-aware creatures with access to infinite knowledge who also exist as these primitive, emotionally driven, hairless monkeys in shoes, basically.
Is Meghan Markle's picture on the cover of that one?
It's her and Harry running away from the imaginary ghost cars that were chasing them.
Have you seen some of the South Park, the lampoons that they've done of them? And you know what? They've outdone South Park in reality. That's the best part about it. They're more outrageous than South Park's parody of them.
Isn't that exactly where we're at?
Yeah.
Reality is more of a joke than the comedy now.
It is. There's nothing funny on TV anymore unless you watch the news.
That's a great line. That's brilliant.
It's so true. Peter, we got to wind this down. Thanks again. Give out your website. Do you have a website?
Not a website.
Not a website.
I probably should have a website, shouldn't I?
At some point.
Do you need a website anymore? Nah. On social media, Peter Abrams, and then Current Affairs is Current Affairs music everywhere, and just Current Affairs on Spotify, etc. And if you really want to find me, you'll find me.
Go to Scotland. Go to Scotland and start screaming in the streets.
And I will appear. But yeah, I can't wait to come back on and do number 7. I feel like we should do something special for lucky number 7.
Yeah, when you get a couple of these books out, be happy to promote them, so come back for that. You just let me know. I'm here.
Awesome. Okay, let's do that. Thanks. Amazing. I know you are, and it's always a great time catching up. I love you. I love the show. I just think it's just great. It's great to have real, honest conversations about here, there, and everywhere. I know we go all over the map, but I think we always return to the good point of good communication and great conversation. Connection is what matters. Yeah, that's a nice way to end it, isn't it?
Yeah. Beautiful. All right.
Great.
Peter, thanks. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Douglas. See you soon.